Ladies and gentlemen, here we are with Sam Harris. This will be part 3. Now, he's just been saying, haven't you noticed that there's a voice in your head?
Thoughts just emerge in consciousness. We're not authoring them. We can't choose them before we think them. That would require that we think them before we think them.
We can't choose our thoughts before we think them. That would require we think them before we think them. Can we choose them before we think them? No, but we can choose them over the long term. Right? That's the whole point about objectivism, is that you shape your thoughts, you shape your feelings, you shape your ideas, you shape your beliefs over the long term. Your emotions particularly can't change in an instant. Your beliefs about something can change in an instant. Your view of something can change in it. Like when the Twin Towers fell that day, that could change your view of everything in an instant. Or when you see somebody do or say something, your view of them can change in an instant. Or when somebody tells you some fact that you didn't previously know. Like I heard that NASA is trying to generate electricity just by moving a wire through an electrical field, which is how we generate electricity in every single one of our power plants. Only the electrical fields that they're using are just out in space. Electrical fields are just permeating space. And you can generate electricity just by moving a wire through them. They generated too much electricity, it snapped the wire melted. Now that blew my mind. It changed my view of deep space. There are electrical wires or electrical currents permeating the vacuum of space. Now, a simple fact can change your view of things. Over time, you have to adjust all of your other views to accord with that single new fact. And over time, as all of the implications reverberate throughout your brain, you will emotionally adjust your view over time. Now, Sam Harris wouldn't be able to listen to or take part of anything I've just said. He would just be blown out of the water by it because we don't have free will. We can't choose anywhere along there. We're just a pinball machine.
If you can't control your next thought, and you don't know what it's going to be until it arises.
Can I not control it? Now, just to look at this exact instant, no, but over time I can. Now, if this is his case, Sam Harris, if this is your case, the instantaneous, less than 1 second, exactly instantaneous occurrences, the fact that some occurrences of the brain, some occurrences in the brain, don't appear like we chose them. It appears like we're sort of in a popcorn machine, and we can grab the ones we want and eat as many as we want and leave them laying around and pay attention to them or not. We're sort of in a popcorn machine, right? And thoughts and ideas pop up, and it's up to us to choose which ones to focus on and which ones to strengthen, which ones to ignore. And so Sam thinks that the fact that our brain sort of manufactures a lot of stuff and puts up to us and says, interesting thought, try this. Interesting thought, try this. Right? That's how tools get manufactured. That's how problems get solved. That's how different ways of cooking happen. So the fact that you've got 20 ideas in your brain roiling around and 3 of them combine to make this new thing, and then you go out and you have to hammer it out and make it, and it doesn't quite work, and you have to adjust it and try, but you had the idea. You know, now I've had this happen to me 12 times, making little models of things, not necessarily a world-changing invention, but a vision of something. So he's looking at some little detail of the way that our mind, like, composes and proposes. And then we have to choose these popcorn bits that pop up and decide what to do. He looks at one little fact of that and says, this is not chosen. This particular bit here seems to happen automatically. At any given moment, your thoughts seem to pop up automatically. Now, while you've been listening to me saying these things, I had visions of fireworks when I was a kid. I had a vision of a motorcycle wreck that I had when I was a kid, and I laid on the couch for a week with scrapes and bruises. It didn't break any bones. Now, that has nothing to do with this. I actually, right now, I'm having a vision of the bus stop I stood at up till I was about 13 or 14. Cold mornings, breath, people standing around, awkward, kids together not talking to each other, neighbors didn't like each other. Now, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Nothing, except right now, actually, I thought maybe I should mention this because it proves my point that my mind is not necessarily 100% with you guys and with Sam. For some reason, I am standing at a bus stop when I was 14, and only just for a second I thought, well, let me focus on that. Why do I see that bus stop? Every once in a while it pops in my head every few days. Nothing particular happened there. It's just a couple of embarrassing little things when I was a kid. Jesus, why would it keep coming into my mind once in a while? I don't know. There are other things that used to come into my mind from time to time and don't so much anymore. So I used to have visions of a road going over top of the roof of my house that I grew up in as a kid. And I'd have a vision of the road coming from the road out in front, going up over our house, and back over the river behind our house. There was no road going there. Why did I have a vision of that? I don't really have those visions anymore. I don't know why. So why does our mind do these things? The fact that we're not in control of 100% of the things that our mind does means that we live in the type of mind we live in, Sam. We wouldn't be in the type of mind we're in if we didn't live in a popcorn mind that was sort of saying, how about this? Crazy thought here. Oh, you've been working on this. This is very important. Pay attention to it, right? Our mind proposes things that are very important with a very deep emotional cue to them. Boom. And then it proposes other things with a light emotional cue. Boing. Right? It says, wouldn't it be funny if a unicorn rode a unicycle because it's one horn and one wheel, right? And your mind says that and you go, that's stupid. Why am I thinking of that stupid thing? And you just move on. You don't then go write a novel about unicorns on unicycles unless you're, a modern novelist. So your mind is constantly doing things, and what do you choose to focus on? Sam says because you didn't focus at any given instant, at any given thought, therefore what, Sam? Therefore you have no ability to focus? Therefore you can never focus? Therefore you can't choose which one of these things that pop into your head to focus on? Therefore what, Sam? What follows?
Where's your freedom of will?
You have no freedom of will then. So he destroys freedom of will just because your mind is not 100% always 100% purposeful thought. Now, it occurs to me as we're going through this, what would we have purposeful thought about if every single thought that came to our mind was chosen by us? Now I will choose this thought. What would that really look like? Because the world we actually live in is thoughts occur to us and then we choose them or not. That's actually the world we live in. Now, why would that be a different... In what way would we have free will if it were some other way? So we live with the computer that churns things around and proposes them to us. Does that really destroy our ability to pay attention to certain things? Admittedly, we don't pay attention all the time. We do go to sleep. And we do that zombie thing when we're driving to work. I did it just last week because I had to go to pick my daughter up, and I was on the same route I went to work, and I went right past the turn I was supposed to go to pick my daughter up. And I had to go around the other way and go up and backtrack a block. So we go into zombie mode. We go into automatic. We go into not paying attention. Now, I didn't run any red lights. I didn't hit into anybody, but I wasn't paying any attention to what I was doing, where I was going. I wasn't thinking at all. I was just driving that car and off, probably arguing against some anarchist in my head. So the fact we don't have an infinite control of every thought, and that we don't think it before we think it, proves what, Sam? See, he could accept we have free will and the ability to focus on certain thoughts sometimes. We can't always focus all the time. He could accept that we can focus sometimes, and then he could analyze psychology from the fact that human beings have the power to focus their mind sometimes. You can't focus all the time. Try as I might, eventually other thoughts start crowding in so much on Sam that I just have to shut it off and go clear my mind, cleanse my mind. Right? We cannot focus all the time. That's interesting, that actually, why we can't focus all the time. When we get doing something too much, too long, and our brain is like, oh, is it bored with it? Is it out of room to put this stuff? And it's like, it's got a file folder for any given subject, maybe. And as that file folder gets thicker and thicker and thicker, it starts to get like this, and then pages start spilling out and stuff. And when the pages start spilling out, it becomes disorganized, and that's when you lose focus, and you have to go. And you have to focus, and you have to either take a nap or just take a break from it for a few hours, you know. I experienced this at the park with painting. My daughter says, where are we going to set it up? And with her jabbering, I just could not, I don't know, where are we going to set up? I don't know. So I went and got my little watercolor pad, and I told her, you just go play. I just went and sat on a bench, and I just started drawing a couple of things. And then I was able to look around the park and imagine myself standing there with an easel, and I was able to focus. Now that's kind of interesting. What does it mean even to focus? When I focused on that problem of where are we going to set up our easel and the paints and the paint box, because it's going to take 20 minutes to set it up. It's not a light thing. It's going to take 30 minutes to break it down, and we're going to be there for 3 hours, so we've got to choose a spot. Now, I couldn't set my mind to work on that immediately. Why not? I realized subconsciously, I don't have anything to work with here. What are you talking about? For one thing, make this little kid be quiet. So I told her, you go play. I can't focus while you're talking to me. Secondly, I don't know what's around me. I haven't sat in this park and looked around thinking where to paint from. So I sat on a bench with my pencil, and I said, what's a nice view? Oh, that brickwork yonder behind the tree is obscured a bit. And so I started doing a little sketch of some distance trees, the walkway and the path and the grass. And then I said, oh, there's some nice, I see some shade. I see a nice rock that I could put my stuff on and have my easel and my stuff on the rock in some shade. And as the sun goes over there, that shade's going to continue. So it's not going to become a sunny spot. It's in an, right? So then, as I'm looking, I can start to understand. And so what happens is I'm looking, and my subconscious is throwing up thoughts. No, standing over there would be rough. We'd be in the sun. Standing over there would be rough. There's kids, they're having a barbecue, don't want to be next to that bit. So things that I didn't even think of at first, didn't matter to me, couldn't focus on, they didn't occur to me. Eventually, they're getting into my subconscious. My mind is playing with them, imagining me, and it throws up a thought and says, how would you like to be over there by that barbecue in the sunlight? And I go, okay, well, that's a spot we're not going. All right, where else is there? In fact, that maybe gives me the idea to look for the shady spots, right? Okay, so this is now I am analyzing a deeper level and more interesting facts of how the mind works than Sam could ever get to. He's just dismissing this stuff. He's saying, see, you didn't choose that. No free will. See, you didn't choose that. No free will. This proves free will all along, Sam. Our brain works in a certain way, and the way that it works is XYZ, fill in the blank. I'm showing you, I'm explaining it. Now, we are 15 minutes, and it took 20 seconds of Sam to get us to 15 minutes.
The contents of consciousness are...
I'm gonna rewind and let you hear now the things that he said that prompted me to say the 15 minutes of stuff that I just said.
thoughts just emerge in consciousness. We're not authoring them. We can't choose them before we think them. That would require that we think them before we think them.
Those are the things that just prompted my 15-minute long dialogue. Sam, there's more to this stuff than you're giving credit. You're just dismissing it by saying, it just happens. I didn't choose this. You're choosing your thoughts over time. More and more thoughts are occurring to you about this subject of free will versus determinism over time because you've chosen to focus on the subject, Sam.
If you can't control your next thought and you don't know what it's going to be until it arises,
that is the popcorn machine of consciousness. We don't know which one of those popcorn bits is going to pop up next. And we live in a finite consciousness where we focus sometimes on very few things, or not very many things, or a certain amount, half, I don't know how many it is. He's going to go over the point later that there's lots of stuff going on in your guts. In what sense are you choosing that? In what sense are you choosing for your lungs to work or your heart? And this is where I say you've been dropped on the doorstep of reality. You're able to focus your attention. You have a finite will. You have the free will, the ability to choose to focus on certain things. Not on everything. You can't choose everything. You can't choose how long your toes grow. Some things are just given. You can't choose whether or not you have ears. You're just born with them. Some things you don't have free will about, Sam. Why does that bother you? Why does it bother you that you can't choose whether or not you have taste buds? Where's your free will? No, of course you can't choose. You can't choose whether or not you're going to have the next thought that pops into your brain. Over time you can choose that, Sam. Just because you can't choose in any instant doesn't mean you can't choose anything ever. And that is the conclusion he's erroneously making again and again.
Where's your freedom of will?
See?
The contents of consciousness are born of an unconscious mental life. You can't honestly take credit for your unconscious mental life. You have...
The contents of consciousness are born from an unconscious mental life. Now, is it unconscious, our mental life? That's a very strange claim and a very strong claim, isn't it? And I think, on the face of it, extremely erroneous. We do consciously choose what to take in, clearly. We consciously choose whether to read a book or not, and whether to reread the paragraph where we lost focus and didn't understand what he was saying, and go back and reread that paragraph. We choose those things. So the things that make it into our brain, the movies we watch, the songs we listen to, the colleagues we talk to, the questions we ask them, how seriously we take their answer, whether or not we reflect on their answer later when it pops back into our brain, do we say, yep, and just leave that thought? Or do we dwell on it and try to implicate other things and try to connect these thoughts? So we do build our own consciousness over time, Sam. It's not true that we're just a pinball. He finds the fact that an automatic thing happens one place in our mind, and he just blows the rest of the mind out of water and says, pinball, overgeneralizing from one instantaneous, the fact that in any given instant, a thought may occur to us that we didn't plan and don't know about and didn't foresee. That fact alone seems to be the pinion on which he rests his entire view that our mind doesn't exist.
You're making millions of decisions right now with organs other than your brain, which you're not conscious of. But you don't feel responsible for these.
Am I deciding for my fingernails and toes to grow, my hair to grow? Is that a decision? Now, those are just happening. That's a lot of what's going on in your brain. It's just happening. That doesn't mean that we don't ever get to make any choices at all. I cut my hair. I clip my fingernails, right? And I clip my consciousness. My consciousness would be a hairy mess. Just look at anybody who has no guide from philosophy and they just accept the craziest thing that they hear from friends, neighbors, or their pastor all the time. And they're off on some new thing. It was green algae. Everybody's selling green algae, and now it's a new thing. Crystals, copper bracelets. the stupidest thing. Look at these people. Their consciousness is like fingernails and hair that have never been trimmed and that they don't plan to trim and have no desire to trim. They are a mess. If you trim your consciousness and take care of it, it can be very like a nice piece of shrubbery, or you can have a wild jungle. So Sam could come to grips with these things. He has the intelligence to, but he's set his mind to work on other things, and he keeps choosing to ignore the evidence that he's choosing things. This is very strange behavior, Sam. Very suspicious.
Are you making red blood cells at this moment? Now, your body is, hopefully. But if it were to stop doing this, you would be the victim of that change. You wouldn't be...
Not only is my body working on red blood cells, but my brain, my subconscious, is working on things, projects, ideas, judgments against people, worrying about things that I don't even... When it tries to call them up to my conscious mind, sometimes I go, don't want to think about that, don't want to think about that, I had to add brake fluid to my car a few weeks ago. I checked it last week to see, and it's right where so it's not leaking quickly, but it is leaking. Damn it. And that's going to be, right? That's in my subconscious, and I don't want to think about it. I every time I think about it, I say, no, we checked the level of the fluid. It's a very slow leak. But brake fluid's corrosive. You can't have it leaking. You got to get it fixed. All right. So I'm worried about that. Now, it's in my subconscious somewhere. Now I'm so worried about it. I'm thinking about the money of it. All right. See? Now it has taken over my conscious mind. I've lost my train of thought with Sam. Isn't that weird, Sam? How we have to choose what to focus on. How it's up to us. It's our free will. Isn't that weird? And sometimes things pop up and we say, oh, I don't want to think about this. But we have to. Oh. And then why do we have to think about it? Because you haven't resolved it, Sam. Your mind knows you need to resolve it. Or else what? Well, we have a long history, Sam. We go back, this particular person goes back for 4 decades almost. And we know that when we don't fix things that we know need to be fixed, then we have more problems in the future. We know it from experience. And we're hoping we might get away free on this one and it won't cause any extra problems in the meantime. But we also know that that's a vain hope. How do we know that, Sam? Because we've focused on these ideas before. And we've noticed how this occurred before. We're not new to this rodeo. So you wouldn't have the thoughts you have, and you wouldn't have the chain of thoughts occurring to you. You wouldn't be going down the path you're going down if you wouldn't have made the choices, the free will choices in the past, Sam, that you made in the past. So, it's like you're like a sled going downhill, but you steer it, right? Now, Sam's upset that we can't fly away. He says, how am I in control of this situation? I don't have wings. I don't have pony wings. I don't have unicorn wings. No, you're on a sled. You've been born on a sled. It's a certain nature. Now, maybe it's not a sled. Maybe it's a bicycle, whatever. But it's a bicycle, then. It's not a sled. Whatever it is, that's what it is. You're in a brain that has a particular nature. And you get to do a certain amount with it. Not an infinite amount, just a certain amount. So try to appreciate the nature of the machine that you're in. Right? You don't get to choose how many red blood cells to produce. If that goes downhill, you're dead. If you're not producing any red blood cells, you're dead. You don't get to choose certain things. You don't get to choose how your teeth grow, or how long they grow, or how good they grow. All you get to choose is whether you put a lot of sugar on them or brush them or whatever. So learn the nature of the thing you're involved with and make your choices carefully. Now, we're getting pretty close to lengthy, and the video's getting long. We got 5 minutes. We'll keep going a bit here.
Experience in life is actually totally compatible with the truth of determinism. We don't have this robust sense of free will.
Again, a very bald assertion. Our experiences in life is totally compatible with determinism, he says. He chooses to say. He has to tamp down the evidence of free will constantly, including really, really stupid bald assertions like that he chose to make. And a million choices over his lifetime led to him saying that right there. In fact, probably a subconscious strain is saying to him, this is all very tenuous and the audience knows it. Try to make a strong claim for our case. And then a little devil is sitting on the shoulder of that guy saying, why are you being bad? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Sam, therefore, has a cacophony of voices in his subconscious saying, your case isn't very strong. Yeah, but why are you making that case? Okay, this case is a very, very strong case. You know, that's his subconscious coming out right there. That's his subconscious making that claim. Terrified subconscious, realizing that he's losing or has lost or is just floating, realizing that he's in a disaster zone. His subconscious says,
our experience in life is actually totally compatible with the truth of determinism.
Really? All the free will we experience all the time and all the decisions we make all the time? In what sense is that totally compatible with determinism? In his theory, in his La La Land theory, he's straining every last sinew of his subconscious to make every claim, no matter how ridiculous, to get you to accept on pain of him and his ego looking ridiculous and him having to backtrack. So, that was a very telling fact right there on this discussion of the subconscious and how it's in control, and we only get to sort of maneuver over the long pole, and we're in control of the long term. We're in control of our mind in the long term. What's his mind doing to him is tormenting him. Poor guy.
Have this robust sense of free will the moment we actually pay attention to how thoughts and intentions arise. And again, it's important to notice that this is true whether or not we have immortal souls. And the case I'm building against free will does not presuppose philosophical materialism.
All right, I can't even put my brain into that thought because what would I'm an atheist. We don't have a soul. It doesn't make any sense to view it. I'm so far gone from that. I can't even understand what he would be talking about, and I don't really know why he mentions it being an atheist. And I think that it's a little bit telling because I'm not trying to convince people who are religious and believe in God. It's like, if you're in that camp, you need to first stop believing in God, and then I'll have some things to say to you. But I don't know what you're doing over there in that camp. So why does he think that his theory against free will is something he needs to address? Why is he being careful to make sure, hey, the logical implications of this apply to you too, you believers, right? I just don't have anything to address the believers with at all. But somehow he thinks his theory, he thinks it's important that he point out that his theory applies to them and their theories, which is interesting. I haven't done a lot of thinking on it. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I'm going to put my subconscious to work on this. And every time information comes in about this, I'm going to put it in and I'm going to say, why is Sam concerned about addressing a group of people that are notably irrational? Like, he wants to convince them or sway them? Or why is he addressing them? Why does he think that their worldview and his worldview need to come into substantive contact? Or is it something else? Like, what is it? I don't know exactly what's going on here. I'm going to pay attention to it in the future. I'm going to put more information into my mind as it comes available to me, and I'm going to try to connect those every time that it occurs to me. So I'm going to set my free will to work on this question, Sam, of why you're addressing a group of notably irrational people and seem to be concerned about what they would think about your theory. That's very strange behavior. Now then, we're getting long. I won't. We're at 11 minutes and 20 seconds. This is going to be a long time getting through this video at this rate. If you appreciate what I do, ladies and gentlemen, smashing Sam Harris and his nonsense and pointing it out for anyone who wants to watch at length the ridiculous nonsense that Sam gets up to. Please patronize me. Give me $5, $10, $50 a month, whatever you think's appropriate. I think, Sam says don't send him money for his podcast if you're the type of person who has trouble buying a coffee, right? If $5 or $10 is difficult for you to come up with, then don't send the money to him. Only send him money if you're comfortable. And so I guess all the people who want to send $5 or $10 to a podcast are already doing that. So I'm talking to the rest of you. Skip your coffee. Patronize MrCropper at the rate of $5 or $10 a month. You just have to skip it for 1 or 2 days to afford my $5 or $10. You can have it the rest of the month.